Great, thanks a lot. Okay. Matthew Lee, Inner City Press. I wanted to ask you two things about the speech that you gave today. One was about NATO, where you expressed some concern of how they interpret their own mandate. And I think the Secretary General has signed some agreement between the UN and NATO that Russia complained at the time, and then it all kind of went under the bridge. I wonder, what do you think of that? What should be the relationship not only of the Security Council but of the Secretariat with NATO? And then I saw that you mentioned the Congo, which I cover, and you said that there's the Brazilian general that now is the force commander of MONUSCO. But recently they announced this ultimatum. They give 48 hours for armed groups to either disarmed or be neutralized. So I wondered.
They were referring.
I'm saying MONUSCO. MONUSCO announced recently, in the last week, they gave this. People were pretty surprised because it sounded like it was interpreted as kind of declaration of war on the rebels. And I just wonder. I mean, I understand just because he's a Brazilian national doesn't mean you have any particular control over him. But the UN seems to be taking a more robust or sort of force-centered approach to peacemaking in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And I'm not sure if what do you think? Is it consistent with the ideas you're promulgating, and what do you? I mean, because he's a Brazilian general there. What do you think of an ultimatum to disarm groups?
The second question. First of all, I think that the strategy that is being developed with the Congo, it meets the kind of requirements that I consider essential to the extent that it's been authorized by the Security Council by a specific resolution. Not only authorized, but I think a consensus resolution. So, the African countries agree with the strategy, and the rest of the Security Council membership also. That is already one very important aspect of what is being attempted. Now, the Congo has been a particularly violent, destructive, pernicious conflict with women suffering violence of all kinds, and that has been festering for too long. So it seems that the notion that you should maybe try a new approach has its logic. And of course, the point that I made today is that having a more robust military presence, UN presence, well, it's an innovation to some degree. We have to see how well that works for that to be used as a precedent for other conflicts. But it is not an end in itself. It has to be placed within a diplomatic strategy, pressuring the countries that are instigating and fueling this violence to modify their behavior, to abide by the agreements that have been reached. There was a very important agreement in Addis Ababa a few months ago that joined the main players, the main stakeholders regarding this very serious conflict, but that is not being adequately implemented. So I also mentioned in the statement that we agree with the representative Mary Robinson, former president of Ireland and former High Commissioner on Human Rights. Well, you have the text, yeah. Mm-hmm. And you got the idea. The other question was
on NATO. Whether, yeah.
I think the speech today is quite self-explanatory. I was giving examples of situations that are of systemic concern. This would be the best explanation I could give here. First of all, the fact that NATO is not clearly inscribed as a Chapter 8 regional organization. It keeps a certain ambiguity regarding its own status vis-a-vis the UN Charter. And it's a defense alliance. So the defense alliance normally would concern itself with defending the territory of its members. But here you have other ambiguities as well. This is what the text points out. So my point is really from a systemic point of view, if you have other groups of countries doing the same thing, and we know that in the past NATO considered that perhaps there would be situations where an explicit authorization for the use of force would not be required from the Security Council. It is also, through some of its strategic concepts, consider the possibility of acting out of area, also further away from the North Atlantic or the regions bordering on the North Atlantic and on the member states. These are, I think the word I use is problematic, because if you take another group of countries in another different region of the world and they start developing similar strategic concepts, well, you will have a situation of increasing tension rather than the kind of increasing cooperation that a country like Brazil would like to see internationally.